Hi, everyone, and welcome to Around the Ladder. I'm Erika Steinberg. Most of the time when we think about changing careers, we focus on things like purpose, identity, or what it is that we really want to do next. But underneath that all, there's something else shaping every decision we make: money. Not just the numbers, but what money also represents. It could be security, fear, freedom, risk, and it's often the part that people don't talk about. So, on today's episode, we're going to talk about it. My guest today, Haley Gray, is a financial planner who works with people in the middle of career transitions, whether they're considering a change, navigating one already, or trying to figure out if what they want to do is even financially possible. And what she sees over and over again is that money isn't just a practical constraint, it's deeply emotional also. So today's conversation is about what money actually can feel like when you're navigating change and how it shapes the decisions that you make. Before we get started, also a quick note: Hallie can't give tax or legal advice, so be sure to consult a CPA or an attorney regarding your own financial planning and decisions. Haley, welcome. So glad you're here. Sorry, I keep switching up on how your name is pronounced. Haley. So glad you're here today.
Yes, I am very glad to be here, and I love this topic. It is so relevant to today's world, and excited to dive in and really kind of talk through this.
Wonderful. Well, let's start with your background because you not only work with people as they're going through career changes, but you went through one yourself. This is not what you were always doing. So take me through that.
It is absolutely not what I was always doing. So I started my career in the tech sector, and I worked for a company where I was paid bonuses, stock options, steady income, all the benefits that you could think of, and climbed the ladder there and made it up to senior management. And then COVID happened. And I had always wanted to get into finance, but wasn't exactly sure how to make that leap. And then, kind of in that space, the nature of my job at the time was a lot of travel, a lot of traveling the country for client meetings, going and doing speaking engagements at conferences. So the writing was a little bit on the wall of what was going on. This was literally March of 2020. And that prompted me to go ahead and start really thinking about making the transition into something that I had always really wanted to do. And so this subject matter of going from corporate to self-employed is one that very much hits close to home because I did it myself and now have my own wealth management practice. But yeah, did not start that way for sure.
Yeah. So, in your experience, you've walked this walk, you've walked this path, so you can really talk to your clients about it. But when people think about changing careers, what do you find that they're most afraid of financially when they think about even making a change like this?
Yeah, so there's a few different things that could cause somebody to have hesitation or that fear of maybe I just stay comfortable where I am, especially if it is not, if it's more proactive versus reactive. So if it's proactively trying to decide, do I make that transition versus maybe a more reactive, maybe downsizing or layoffs or something of the sort. And so I think the major things that cause somebody to be fearful around that is one, marketing and like how do I make sure that I maintain business? Is there proof of concept? Like is my service or my product something that people will buy and how do I make that happen and how do I get my name out there? So that just kind of general business structure there. But from financials, you're losing that every other week. You're getting that steady paycheck. You know exactly what's going to hit. You've got subsidized healthcare benefits that you have through your employer, especially if you've got a family. That can be a really big one. Retirement benefits and matching and pensions and 401k plans and all of that. That's kind of done for you. Um, and then, yeah, just even looking at taxes and tax structure and what that will all look like for people. So, you're really taking a leap off of having this stability into complete unknown. And I think that that causes people to maybe reserve a little bit of, have a little hesitation there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we talk about this, or when I hear people talking about making a career change, and naturally fear does come up, I think that it's common or natural maybe for other people to say to that person, "Oh, it's not going to be so bad. You're going to be great." And they feel like the fear is exaggerated, but there are a lot of unknowns. So, it is kind of accurate, really.
Mhm.
It's really
Absolutely.
there. So when someone comes to you in the middle of a career shift, what's their situation usually like? Like, are they planning the change, or do you find that they're reacting to something like a layoff?
Honestly, it's a mixture of both. And I would say it has been a big part of the people that I work with over the years, but specifically over the last year or two, and especially the last 6 months to a year, I have been seeing an increase in this conversation. Uh, Weekly, I'm having with at least
Wow.
multiple people. Yeah, it has upticked like crazy with people either thinking about it, considering it, actively in it. And so, very, very relevant conversation. And a lot of it too is, especially given the nature of the economy, AI, layoffs. Like yesterday, I was working with someone who works at Meta, and they just had 10% of their workforce eliminated last week. And so, a lot of people who had that stability or thought they were in stable positions now I think recognizing, oh, okay, even if right now I'm safe, it might not always be that way, or starting to see how companies are downsizing and people who have worked somewhere for 15, 20, 30 years being laid off is prompting a lot of people to actually proactively start having this conversation too. So I would say it's a balance of either it's afterwards of like, okay, I've got a lot of skills in whatever my specialty is, and maybe I actually do this on my own versus trying to jump into another corporation, or proactively saying, hey, I want to kind of take control over my own future, and I've got these skills, and maybe I'll give it a go at trying to start my own business.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember when we first spoke. I want to switch gears a little bit and start to talk about the feeling of money. You said something that really struck me, and you said that you think that, or rather, people think money is logical, but it's actually very emotional. We think numbers always add up. What does that look like in real life when you start talking with clients? That emotional side of money.
Money and the psychology of money is the root, really, of financial planning. And a lot of times, even for my own meetings, when I'm meeting with someone that I've never engaged with before, 90% of our conversation is about how they feel about where they are, their goals, their concerns, their priorities, their fears. And then 5 to 10% is actually the numbers. Because that stuff is easy to figure out. It's the real feelings behind how like where you're trying to go, if you feel secure. And I have some people who are above and beyond financially secure. On paper, they are just fine, but they are terrified of running out of money or terrified of retiring and taking their foot off of the gas. Um, I even earlier this week was talking to someone who's in their 70s and absolutely is okay to not outlive her money, but she's only living on her Social Security because she's afraid to tap into other accounts with that fear of not having enough. And then conversely, sometimes I'll work with people who think that they're absolutely okay. And when you look under the hood, they're not. And so really it's kind of getting to the root um, of what's going on psychologically for people. And then you put the pen to paper and you start getting granular with them. Um,
Yeah. I remember I asked you how often during these meetings are people actually like are tears shed, and you I remember you said it's not uncommon at all.
no, no, because finances are extraordinarily personal, very, very
Yeah.
personal. And the way that people view money and their financial situations and dependent on if your parents are still with us, what that looks like for people, if they've got children and dependents, if they are in a position where they might have just been laid off and now they're scared of what things will look like. Um, and so it is one of those subjects, I mean, that impacts so deeply how all the other puzzle pieces of somebody's life looks, and that freedom and that ability to spend into vacation and to spend time with your kids and to take off work at 3, which also is part of what prompts people to want to start their own business, to have that flexibility, to be their own boss, to take that into their own hands. But certainly an emotional and personal um, subject matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in my own experience, I may be working most Saturdays, but if I need to be someplace at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for one of my kids, I can be. And I don't
Mhm.
have to ask
So,
anybody. Yeah.
right.
I remember when you and I spoke that we were talking about like the more common emotional patterns that you see. And I think that the ones that I made note of that we spoke about were like the person who feels that they don't deserve success and don't deserve in quotes, the person who's financially secure but still terrified, which you talked about, and the person who needs permission to spend or make a move. So we talked about the person who feels financially secure. What do you see coming up with like somebody who feels that they don't deserve success or someone who needs permission to spend and make a move? What do you like? How do you, I don't even know what you say. I feel like that anytime you're a financial planner, you need to have a psychology degree on the side.
Yes, yes, I may have to go back to school for that. Yeah, it is, especially when you're jumping from corporate where you've got so much security to something where you're just like, I'm going to jump off this cliff and hope my parachute opens. Um, that is terrifying. It really is. And it prevents a lot of people from feeling like I can do it. I'm enabled enough to do it. I'm educated enough to do it. I've got enough experience to do it. So all of these things that are proof that you can do it, sometimes the mind just uh, is a disservice to us because it's like, well, maybe I don't have the ability to be a business owner. I'm a great software engineer, but I don't know the first thing about business structures and all of that sort of thing. And maybe I just can't do it. Or I don't know, I don't want to go from this lucrative income to not ever knowing how I'm going to maintain a client base. And so that fear really gets into people's minds, even though they're definitely overqualified or on paper, not even on paper, like they do have the financial means to do it. And so that's why with entrepreneurs, it really is a certain mindset of someone who can say, you know what, it's a risk reward scenario. And I feel like I know and I have talked through and I've done the math and I've run the numbers. I can make this work. And I believe in myself enough to go out there and try it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I'm at least going to try because you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And if
Yes.
it's something that you have this innate kind of nature about you of like, I want to try this, then yeah, I mean, do it. You've got to run the numbers. Absolutely have to run the numbers on things. And there's a few different things to consider and to think about. But um, once that all aligns and adds up for you, then really it comes back to the psychological piece of it of here's your permission to go
Yeah.
try it.
Is that when
So
you start actually, is that when the numbers actually come out? That when somebody's trying to decide, is this a real financial risk? Is this a fear-driven risk? And you're, guiding this conversation, is that when the actual numbers come out? And you can show them this is what it really is.
it can either be proactive or reactive. I always try and talk with people on the proactive side of like maybe while they're still employed, if they are and they're thinking
Mhm.
about this, of how do we maybe phase into business ownership to see, to test things out a little bit and looking at those numbers and preparing. You're still on the tarmac. So, okay, if this is something we're seeing 6 months to a year out, how do we make sure all of our ducks are in a row so that you can take off and do that? If it's reactive, then it's a different story where we're like, okay, where can we cut costs and expenses? How do we build up savings? How are we playing a little bit more defense? And then how do we adjust so that you can move forward in that way? But yeah, trying to be proactive to then take it. But what with that, there's the caveat that you don't want to wait too long. A lot of times people get in their minds of, I need X, Y, and Z amount before I'll feel safe. And sometimes
Yeah.
that number never comes.
And
And
what
so,
is safe? I mean, safe
right.
is so
Hmm.
it's yeah, it's so vague.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why those conversations are so critical because then they can actually get clarity around, oh, I don't need to wait until I have 2 years of living expenses or whatever. Like I don't need to, that's
Yeah.
overkill for what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
It's really like working with someone to or on your own, but a lot of times just having a team behind you to help actually get you there
Yeah.
is important.
So if somebody's thinking about making a career change, so it's proactive, they haven't made the move yet, what should they be doing financially? I mean, you mentioned a couple of things, but what should they be thinking about or what moves should they be making now?
Yeah, so I would there's a few different things and it's a person by person situation because the thing
Yeah.
with going corporate to self-employment is through corporate in your career, especially if you've been working 10, 20, 30 years, is you've developed this lifestyle. And so you've got your cars, you've got your home, you've got X, Y, and Z, these benefits that you're used to. And so a lot of it comes down to cash flow. And a lot of times the reasons that businesses run out of leg room is because they've run out of cash flow. And so really looking at a few different things. The first being what are your expenses? What are your miscellaneous expenses that might need to be cut for a while? And how much do you actually need on a monthly basis to make sure that the lights stay on in your home? And so that area is where a lot of people they think they know what they're spending and they don't truly know what they're spending. And so really diving in there to be like, okay, I actually don't need as much as I thought that I would need. And so if I can just start making this much within 6 months to a year, that will be able to be sufficient to keep me moving. So really analyzing that, also the nature of the business that you're moving into. Is it one with a lot of overhead? Is it one with little overhead? So you want to look at what are my actual business expenses going to be? What's my technology going to look like? What's my marketing plan going to look like? What all do I need to put in place for that? And figuring out because you always want to keep personal and business separate. That's where a
Yes.
lot of times people get mud in the water is because they've integrated the two and it's very hard to figure out, okay, what's coming in, what's going out for business, what do I need for personal? So making sure you're structuring those up front is going to be important. Um, Also, proof of concept is a big one. So just like, is this something where I know if I go out to market, I've already got some clients lined up or I've got a prospect pipeline in place and I think I could start generating revenue in 6 months to a year based on some of the leads or opportunities that I have in place. And then, as far as savings, if you're still working actively, I would probably shift a lot of numbers around to really focus on building up your emergency reserves. And I don't mean emergency reserves as in the water heater goes out. I mean the income in, like making sure that you've still got what you were used to in in cash on hand. And so typically that's going to be 6 months to a year, usually closer to a year if there are dependents. If you've got kids that you know your expenses are a little bit higher, something else might come up, or bigger business expenses. But at least that 6 months to a year kind of safety net to lean into.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what if the change is forced? So you get laid off or you're burned out and you just have to leave. What should you be doing in those first 30, 60, 90 days?
Yeah, so that's where really digging into cash flow is going to be huge of where can I kind of cut back a little bit. And that is a big wake up call for a lot of people, especially coming out of corporate, because it's tough. You went from having what you knew to the unknown.
Mhm.
And so really kind of leaning back, getting granular, and then doing what it takes to really like if the nature of your business requires certificates, if it requires um, X, Y, and Z, just full steam ahead pushing into that if that's the direction that you're going to go. But I would say the defense is the biggest thing of just where can I cut costs right now? It's not a forever thing, it's a momentary thing. So where can I cut that cost right now? And how can I start really digging in to my own financials, the business financials, and then figuring out what I need to do to actually get the doors open, to get the website up, to actually start kind of figuring out where I can push ahead with this business concept that I have.
Yeah, I remember when my husband and I started looking really closely at our spending, we were shocked when we saw how much we were spending on going out to dinner and ordering in. It didn't feel like it was that much, but with a family of four, you go out here, you go out there, you order in, and ordering in is incredibly expensive now.
Right.
And we're
Yeah.
like, what are we doing? We're both actually good cooks and we both like to cook. So why are we doing this? And it made a huge difference. Just that one adjustment made a huge difference for us. So,
Yeah, and I think just that reminder of it's not forever, it's just right now.
yeah,
As humans, we go through seasons always. There's always different types of seasons, and this just might be the season that you're in. And if it was
the
something that
season
was
of cooking.
forced, yeah, yeah, you just whip out the seasoning and then, forget about DoorDash and start cooking a little bit more. Yeah.
Yep. So, Since you do work with people who are leaving a stable job to start their own thing, what kinds of things catch them off guard? Like what just comes out of left field where maybe they weren't expecting it?
A big one's going to be healthcare. So going
Yes.
into the cost of healthcare. If you're still on, if you're still employed, I mean, even if either side of the coin that you're on, doing that research to figure out what is this actually going to cost for us, and or shifting into if you're married, maybe looking at your other spouse's plan and adjusting accordingly. But healthcare is going to be a major cost for self-employed people that catches them off guard. And I think also too the ramp up of like it might take several months, if not even a year, before you're actually getting steady income because that initial time frame is so variable. You might have a wonderful contract come through and then it might take a long time to get another one. So you have to be mentally prepared for that.
Yeah.
And unlike a steady paycheck, it's a different type of planning that you have to consider because you can't spend what comes through the door. And so if you are in a variable position with income, it is really being diligent about how do I make sure that I'm planning for the months when maybe there's nothing coming through.
Yeah.
And that really does catch people off as well.
Yeah, yeah, I have lived that myself. So, what about when people try to build a side hustle? And so they're doing that on the side before leaving their job. What have you seen work about that or maybe not work with that?
I think it's a good way to get your feet wet with what your idea is. If
Yeah,
you've
get that
got
proof
the
of concept.
Yeah, if you've got the ability to say, okay, I've got my 9 to 5 and then my 5 to 9. And my 5 to 9 is really where I'm going to focus on figuring out my marketing and my website, maybe hiring a CPA if you don't have one to figure out those. Because when you shift into self-employment, and again, prefacing not giving tax advice, but generally speaking, you owe quarterly taxes. So you've got to make sure you're planning for with like you're planning buckets for that so that you don't get penalized for not paying those. Um, Again, not tax advice, but yeah, so it's a different type of structure that you've got to think of and be proactive with. And I think when you're able to have the luxury of I've still got my 9 to 5, now I can start exploring what this is that I potentially want to do. I would really leverage that opportunity because you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You've got this comfort here, and then you've got the flexibility to trial and error and to really see, okay, if I'm taking this concept out and I'm networking and I'm meeting people and people are already either agreeing or telling me like, oh yeah, that's something that I would be interested in, or I realize that there is a need for this. That's your opportunity to really figure that out and to build your pipeline up so that when
Yes.
you take the leap, um, you're not starting straight from scratch. You're going in with some solid opportunity already lined up for you. So yeah, and then I would also use that time to again maybe minimize. Everybody's plan is different, but it's okay if you have to save less in one bucket to put more in another bucket to prepare for that, 6 months to a year versus
Uh-huh.
going as hard on your retirement as you might have been before, or going back to the seasons. It's like everything is kind of temporary. So if you need to make certain adjustments so that you can plan for this leap, give yourself permission to do that. A lot of times people are like, but I don't want to miss out on a year of fully maxing this
Yeah.
out or doing this. And it's like, well, we might have to so that take a step back so you can go forward. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a year. Like you said, it's temporary. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the generational differences because you and I talked about this probably a couple of times. We talked about how different generations think about work and money in different ways. What shifts are you seeing between like the older generation, and I would probably put myself in there, Gen X and the boomers, and then maybe younger generations like millennials and my kids are at the young end of Gen Z, but certainly the older Gen Z are fully in the workforce now. What kinds of different shifts are you seeing there?
Honestly, the majority of people that I am working with who are in this position are Gen X.
No
They're
wonder you and I get along so well.
yeah, they're late 40s, 50s, and early 60s too, who are
Yeah.
like, okay, I've built up a very solid career. I have a depth of experience and knowledge, and they're making that shift, good by choice or not by choice. And so I think there's this confidence that there's the fear for sure, but there's also this confidence because you know your talent, and then also you've got a network of people to lean into, generally speaking, or like you've spent 20, 30 years in a career where you've learned how to do it, how the machine works. And so I would say that I find the Gen X generation is more likely to take that leap of faith and to go out on their own and see what that looks like for them too, because they want that flexibility, like you mentioned, wanting to be able to take your kids. A lot of them have kids who are at that age where it's like, I just want to be able to go to soccer practice
Yeah.
and whatnot. I think the millennial generation is, I see less of the career pivot into business ownership. Um, and I think that it is more just because there is that just kind of mindset of I need to hold on to what I have and what I know to be true, which is that W-2 job, which was like ingrained through the boomer generation, which was the generation of you work somewhere for 20 or 30 years. And so I think there's some psychological differences there, and the benefits and kind of the ease of benefits. I think they also are not as much in a financially stable position to be able to have that cushion or to take that risk. Um, Gen Z, I definitely don't see personally much of it since they're entering the workforce, but they're also putting a lot less emphasis, generalized, a lot less emphasis on the fear component. A lot of them are more on the quality of life. And so willing to take jobs that might pay less or, prioritize time off, things like that. So being a business owner, of course, requires a great deal of work ethic and grit to take something that's nothing and make it into something. And that's why business owners in particular, as a demographic, are some of the most successful, wealthiest people there are because of the risk reward trade-off there. But if it was easy, everybody would do it. And so
Exactly.
it's, so yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
think there's just
interesting.
that tape that absolutely a generational difference there.
I mean, my kids are again are on the younger end of it. My son is just graduating high school now and going to college, and he does not want to work for somebody else. He
Mhm.
absolutely, he said, there's no way that I'm going to spend my time in an office, especially working for someone else. He wants to have his own business. He wants to have a
Oh,
garage. He
nice.
wants to be, yeah, like he knows what he wants to do. And a lot of his friends, and their older siblings are the same way. Like they do not want
Hmm.
to be at somebody else's beck and call. It's very interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, so I've not seen as much or not worked with as many younger business owners. So maybe I need to learn more on that side of things of just like what businesses they're getting into, and where they're taking it. But yeah, I think the concept, I think post-COVID, and over the last few years, just seeing how no job is guaranteed, no matter how smart you are, no matter how long you've been there, has really caused everyone to recognize like, okay, maybe I do want to like not put my future in somebody else's hands
Yeah.
and see what
Especially if
that
you
looks
were
like.
young, if you were in, at school age at that time, and you were watching what was going on with your parents and their friends and people getting laid off and companies closing down so quickly during COVID. Like
Mhm.
somebody, so you witnessed it firsthand.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So, well, I've said it before. When my kids get old enough, I'm going to make an appointment for them to meet you. So,
Yeah, happy
it's
to help.
not so far off. So
Yeah.
it's going to come up faster than I think. So, last question for you. If someone is thinking about making a career shift, a big career shift, but they feel financially stuck, what's one thing that they could do this month to create some more flexibility for themselves? And also, what's something that they should maybe stop doing?
So I would say the immediate action steps, if this is something that you're truly considering, is having an admin night, and really
Sounds so
focusing.
exciting.
It sounds great. It sounds so fun, but to really sit down and to focus on not just what your needs are financially, living expense wise, when you actually look under the hood and you're like, oh, yeah, extra $1,000 going out the door, and I didn't even realize I was spending that much on X, Y, or Z. So trying to navigate that, and then really, as simple as it sounds, focus on building up your buffer. Because that is what a lot of times businesses that don't make it past the first year, it's because they have run out of cash. And so just making sure that you have that cash in place to give you flexibility, because flexibility is everything. And those, making sure that you have the ability to have a month that's not good and not go into fear of, okay, I need to jump back into corporate. It gives you that space to really be able to lean into what you're doing and to have that permission of you're okay. You planned out the numbers align, you were planning for this, you knew this was a potential, and it just gives you a little bit of flexibility and grace there to say, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay. Because truly that is a big reason why people try to go into it and then shift back out.
Yeah.
So that's what I would recommend as a first step.
Yeah. The other thing that occurs to me, I know I said that was my last question, but this occurred to me like throughout our conversation is that also remembering that money has an energy. It's a very powerful energy. And so be ready. And energy can, it can lift you up, it can pull you down. I mean, it can really take you for a ride. So just be ready for that. Be ready for whatever that could be. And as you said, things are temporary. So, it could be, as I know from being a business owner now for 7 years, more than 7 years, there are times still where I'm like, oh my goodness, why on earth am I doing this? And then, most of the time I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. I love this. I can't imagine another way. How could I have
Right.
ever lived another way? But it really does have an energy to it.
hmm No, I love that. I love that concept, and it's very true.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. I am so glad that we did this. I feel like this was a really important conversation. And I think that, well, I'm going to include in the show notes how people can connect with you. So I'll be sure to include that there. And I know that you're updating some of your branding stuff. So I'm excited to share that with everybody in my audience. And I appreciate you being here. I hope that we can have a part two at some point. I know we're already planning on something, so more on that later. And as always, this is Around the Ladder, where we are basically figuring out what it actually looks like to build a path that fits for us. So if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others. Thank you for listening. And Hallie, thank you again for being here. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.